Before I begin, I'm delighted to be here to talk about the non-governmental organizations and the role that civil society plays. My personal experience, I've been at IBM, a company that knows a little bit about technology, not too much. We've been in business for over 100 years. But before that, I served here in New York City as Deputy Chancellor of Schools. So I was involved in helping to lead and manage the largest school system in the United States. And before that, worked in the mayor's office, worked for the governor, and also led a not-for-profit organization that did public policy and community organizing in New York. So my perspective, although I'll speak to you from my private sector role right now, I've been in all sectors. And I agree with our prior speaker that NGOs are critically important. They need government support. But it is the three sectors of the economy that really need to collaborate and work together to solve problems. No one entity, no one sector can do this alone. So I'll describe to you a little bit about the approach that we've taken at IBM. It's a little bit different from philanthropy, from private foundations or corporations. We start off with what are the most challenging problems in society. And that's that list that you see over there on my right. The problem of improving cities, the problem of responding to disasters. We're living at a time right now based upon changes in the environment and climate change where we're having to put up with a majority of activities that people are worried about involve natural disasters, some of them natural, some of them man-made. The problem of education, critically important around the world, whether we're talking about mature markets in Europe or in the United States, where we consistently have problems with young people, especially low income, especially children of color, achieving at high levels. This is not a problem in one place in the world. It's a problem all over the world. The problem of the environment, as I talked about. Health care, providing quality health care to people around the world, regardless of geography, zip code, income level. The problem of jobs and economic growth. The STEM pipeline, trying to develop people with the kinds of skills to be able to be successful in the economy as it's changed. Developing youth leadership, responding to the needs of veterans. You could add things to this list about public safety, other issues that are problems around the world, but we have serious, serious problems, and how we can address them involves more than just checkbook philanthropy. And having been on the other side, I understand how important it is for people of wealth to contribute their wealth, but it doesn't end at that. It needs to go beyond that. So I look in the middle at what are the most innovative technologies that a company like IBM and maybe others represented in the room have as their intellectual capital. The cloud, data analytics, mobile solutions, social media, cognitive computing, consulting, mobile solutions, security, cybersecurity, a variety of different technologies that are being developed and are being used to make a difference in the enterprise for large companies, those who have the resources to be able to get access to the most innovative and customized solutions. But our challenge is, how do you take those technology applications and address them at those most challenging problems facing society? And instead of just giving a check, give a solution. Give something that is going to not only have an impact on one not-for-profit or in one geography, but something that could be scalable, that could be sustainable, could go from serving hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands to millions of people, much in the way that the development of a new product would then grow in the marketplace to be able to benefit very, very many people. But this is not a for-profit enterprise. This is in the social space. So what are the citizenship solutions that we've developed? And I'll go through a couple of them with you, but I'd like to highlight in the middle there, World Community Grid. What is that? Right now, around the world, there are researchers who are struggling to find the budget to do the most important healthcare and environmental research facing society. And many of them don't even begin their study because they don't think they have the resources to be able to afford the purchase of a supercomputer or massive supercomputing power to do their work. To address this challenge, we created something called World Community Grid. And every single one of you in the audience can participate in this. You go to worldcommunitygrid.org, and in 3 minutes, you can donate all the power on your mobile device onto World Community Grid. Right now, there are nearly 1 million devices around the world that are connected, and the combined power represents the 4th largest supercomputer in the world. And that power is then given for free to researchers who are doing studies on the Zika virus, doing studies on childhood brain cancer, neuroblastoma, doing studies on HIV and AIDS. And instead of spending their money to purchase that supercomputer, they can get that computing power when they need to do a calculation for free. So since we created this, it has represented about $260 million worth of free computing power that has led to some very significant and important advances. And that's the concept of coming up with an idea, using the most innovative technology, doing it in a way so that it becomes sustainable and scalable and provides benefit to people around the world. Right below it is something called Watson Teacher Advisor. I would assume that everyone in the room went to elementary school, and you were taught by a teacher who taught math. Fortunately or unfortunately, our teachers are trained as an elementary school teacher. They may not be expert in the teaching of math. And we began to think, what would be the biggest impact of the Watson technology, artificial intelligence, that allows technology to be able to be customized to meet the needs of an individual user? Watson Teacher Advisor is a customized coach for every elementary school teacher around the world. It starts off just in English, but it provides advice to a teacher teaching kindergarten through 5th grade, the best lesson plans in the world, the best teaching strategies in the world, the most effective annotated video of teachers teaching those lessons, so that a teacher at any time during the day, totally free, can access a personalized coach to help them to teach math and be available at their disposal 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, to improve their ability to teach math. We launched this last week, and in day one, 2,500 teachers signed up. There were 25 million hits on social media, 7 million of them on Twitter, letting teachers around the world know that if you need help to be a more effective teacher, Teacher Advisor is there to be your personal coach. Now, 2016 was a really interesting year. We implemented many of these programs around the world. A new way to educate our students, providing a clear pathway from school to college to career, assistance for cities through a Smarter Cities Challenge. By the way, the Smarter Cities Challenge has assisted 20 cities in India over the last 7 years, and cities all around the world struggling with a challenge, whether it's the homelessness problem or an environmental issue or a public safety issue, and stretch to have the best access to the best brain power and problem-solving talent. We send teams of our top talent from IBM to live in the city and help the city solve that critical problem through the Smarter Cities Challenge. Corporate Service Corps is a corporate version of the Peace Corps. In the United States, back in the 1960s, President Kennedy, at that point, challenged America's youth to sign up for something called the Peace Corps. It's been widely supported by people on bipartisan basis over decades. The concept for a corporate service corps is to select the top talent in a company. We pick 500 of our best young leaders every year on a competitive basis 20,000 applications. We select the 500 top talent, and we send them out in teams in the developing world to work with NGOs to solve their problem, whatever it may be. In Nigeria, the problem was they wanted to implement a free healthcare program for poor women and children. A great leader came up with the idea, but they couldn't manage the implementation strategy to get the program off the ground. The team of Corporate Service Corps participants from IBM working on the ground came up with the management system to solve that problem. In 3 years, 98,000 poor women and children in Cross River Province receive free health care, and the program very successful to this day. We've done over 1,000 projects worth approximately $100 million over a 10-year period, and now many other companies interested in this concept, joining it to be able to send their employees to join an IBM team and learn what they're doing. A clear benefit to society, but a benefit to the company as well. We have said over 3,000 of our young leaders in the company into this program. Their retention rate for top talent at IBM is 6 times the retention rate for our top talent in the company. It's been a major impetus for the company in recruiting top talent. It has built the skills of our workforce, not just to understand solving problems, but to understand cultural adaptability and listening skills in environments that are not what they're normally used to. So it has been probably the most valuable skill-building program for young leaders within the company, in addition to benefiting society. I mentioned World Community Grid with you before, 3 million devices connected. Obviously, the PTech program, we started here in New York City as a way to change what we thought was the path from school to college to career. We have a skills crisis. What's the problem? The problem is that in 1970, in the United States, only 6% of low-income 24-year-olds had a college degree. 1970, 6%. About 45 years later, that number went up, but only to 9%. Is that acceptable? Is it acceptable for 9 out of every 10 24-year-olds from low-income households not to have a college degree? Why that is not acceptable is in the last 10 years, 10 million new jobs were created here in the United States. 99% of them required a post-secondary degree. In that same period of time, 7 million jobs only requiring a high school diploma disappeared. So we've got to turn those numbers around. How do we do it? By coming up with an innovative model, a grade 9 to 14 school, not just for high-achieving students, but for all students, and combine workplace skills, strong academics, with a clear pathway from school to college to career. So successful completers are promised first in line for any job at IBM, and they're getting hired. As a matter of fact, the completion rates for the first PTech school, serving a 100% low-income minority population, 56% of the students completed their degree. Compared to the national average, it demonstrates a 500% increase. So that model is now being expanded to schools around the United States and around the world, providing grants that not just involve cash, but that involve the best talent of a company. We're working with a not-for-profit in the UK, working on the ability to use data analytics to help identify problems of sex trafficking for young people, to be able to use data from banks and others, to be able to use predictive analytics to be more effective in solving a problem before it develops. That's one example. What is corporate social responsibility? What is that about? It's got to be more than just checkbook philanthropy. The role of corporations in society isn't just to contribute. It's to do more than that. And if we look back in history, there are examples of real corporate leadership. Are there geographies that provide pension plans for their employees? That's a way of protecting people as they age into retirement. Where did the first private pension plan come from? The American Express Company developed it and implemented it in 1875 here in the United States, providing their employees who had worked for the company for 20 years with 50% of their salary on retirement at age 60. You got a private pension plan at American Express 50 years before any state government in the United States offered a private pension plan. Paid vacation policy also started in Europe and the United States in the latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century. By 2008, there were 450 companies that had a week's paid vacation. It wasn't legislated. It wasn't regulated. It was developed in the private sector because they believed that it was something that would improve the quality of their workforce, and it would improve the stability of the communities where they operated in, and they took that initiative because they thought it was important. I worked for a company named IBM. After the passage of the Social Security Act, the President of the United States and his first woman cabinet member, Frances Perkins, approached IBM about how are we going to implement Social Security. And the researchers and the scientists at IBM took a look at it and said, it's probably not possible unless we were to invent some type of a new machine. They called it a collator. But it was a request for proposal, so it was a competitive grant. You couldn't guarantee that you were going to win this bid. But the head of the IBM company, Mr. Watson, invested $10 million to create this collator. It ultimately implemented Social Security and provided an opportunity and an advantage for all Americans. It also grew his revenue over a 4-year period by 80% and doubled his workforce. So the opportunity for companies to look at their role in society is a significant one. Maybe it's to prevent a risk to the company. Why do you involve yourself in environmental program and environmental policy? Because you could be regulated. You could be fined. You could pay a penalty. So you'd want to be out in front of that. But there's also the reward. The companies that have the highest platform in corporate social responsibility do better on their tax returns for their shareholders. They do better in terms of recruiting and retaining top talent. And they improve communities around the world. And the improvement of those communities benefits society and it benefits the private sector. So if I can leave you with any message, it's that the private sector has a specific role in making a difference in society. It's not that every company does a great job. There were robber barons in the United States at the beginning of the 20th century where they didn't pay their workers a living wage, and they were demonstrated against, and they hired Pinkerton guards to shoot the people who were picketing. That's not an example of corporate responsibility. We've had examples of companies that have engaged in fraud and abuse, and those things will happen and have continued to happen over the decades. But the real leaders in the private sector, the true leaders, will get out in front and benefit their company and benefit the society by doing some of the kinds of things that I've been talking about and some others that you will hear about from other companies who are here. So the non-governmental sector where I used to work and the government sector where I used to work needs a partner in the private sector to be able to solve these problems and solve them effectively. Thank you very much.